Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday to you. My name is Tim Harris. It's 10 o'clock. It's time for 10 with Tim. Wow, it's been a good week, another good week in the Word, and we are making good progress reading Second Chronicles together in chapter 10. Did you do what I did this morning? I started reading chapter 10, and I'm like, did I skip a chapter? As I've been saying, the chronicler has this tendency to tell the best version of the story. And so yesterday we were having a really good day with Solomon. He had apes and peacocks, and he was importing gold from Ophir, and the Queen of Sheba, liked him a whole lot. I mean, it was all going so well. I told you that there were some things hidden in the footnotes, at the end of the chapter, which there are. As I've told you, the chronicler knows that the story. He assumes that the people reading, this document already know this story, and so in chapter 10, it's just like, what? I mean, all of a sudden, you have this. In chapter 9, you have this amazing, glorious kingdom that God is expanding throughout the nations, and by the end of chapter 10, it's fallen apart. It falls apart as soon as Solomon is gone. It's like, what happened? Well, if you remember, because we read First Kings together, this is all First Kings in the first 12 chapters or so. We're around probably First Kings chapter, 11, somewhere right in there. So go back and remember what we read then, because Kings does a much better job of giving you the full story of the rebellion that is brewing all through Solomon's final years. Again, the chronicler chooses not to tell you that because he knows you can read First Kings, but you need to read First Kings just to call back to mind who Rehoboam is and who Jeroboam, who these characters are, because they are known, in the story earlier when you read Kings. Jeroboam was a military leader that Solomon actually promoted, if I remember correctly. Solomon liked him. Jeroboam was a very impressive military leader. And then one day, Ahijah, the prophet, finds Jeroboam. I think he takes his cloak, he cuts his cloak into 12 pieces, gives Jeroboam 10 pieces, and said, you're going to get 10, 10 of the tribes of Israel are going to follow you, and 2 will continue to follow, in the dynasty of David. God's going to keep his promise to David, but the kingdom's going to be divided because of Solomon's disobedience. Again, the chronicler didn't give you a lot of that, but because of his wives, he loved his wives, he loved women. His women worshipped other gods, so Solomon didn't know how to stand up to his wives, so he worships other gods too. Solomon turns out to be the wisest, stupid person that ever lived. And in the end, his great wisdom was no match for his profound stupidity, and he ends up squandering everything that God had just given him out of faithfulness to his father David. And so that's what happens, in chapter 10, when all of a sudden Solomon dies. Rehoboam, who is his son, goes to Shechem, where Israel is going to gather to make him king. Now Shechem, I believe, is in the northern part of the kingdom. That's kind of a bad sign, because that's where all the people that are disgruntled against Solomon, that's where they all live. Now, they are disgruntled because of part of what, again, the chronicler doesn't quite tell you, but what First Kings tells you. I think it's First Kings, this is probably around chapter 5, when Solomon is building the temple, and that story is being told in First Kings. We're told in First Kings that Solomon conscripts something like 30,000 men from Israel to come and work. I mean, forced labor. Again, you can't enslave the Israelites, and so he doesn't. But what he does, if you recall, is he makes them come work, which is kind of like slavery, only he gives them like a month off and they get to go home. So it's forced labor. It's not slavery, but it walks the line of slavery because you don't have a choice, and it stirred up a lot of animosity. So there's a whole lot of people who are not big fans of Solomon. And so when Rehoboam becomes the king, it's these leaders that these leaders who come with Jeroboam. Jeroboam, ultimately Solomon tries to kill him. He's the one that Ahijah had said, you're going to get 10 of the tribes. The kingdom is going to be divided and you're going to get 10 tribes. Solomon learns to hate Jeroboam, and so Jeroboam has to flee for his life. He goes to Egypt. So when Solomon dies, Jeroboam comes home. All of this happens in 2 verses here in the book of 2 Chronicles. So here we go. The leaders of Israel, they come to Rehoboam and they just say, listen, your father was not a good man. Your father was a harsh master, and we're asking you to lighten the load for us. We will be your loyal subjects, but please don't be like your dad. Don't be like your father. Lighten the load. Ease up. The construction projects are over. Leave us alone now, So King Rehoboam first goes to some of his elders, the elder statesmen, the leaders who've been around a while, who were with Solomon and now with Rehoboam, and they've been around, so they've learned some things. And they just say their advice is actually very good advice, and I think anybody can see that it's good advice. They just say, be good to these people. Just be good to these people. They want to follow you. They want to be loyal, but they need you to be good to them. Just be good to them. Go back, give them a good answer, promise them you'll be good to them, and they're going to be your loyal subjects. All right. This is such a turning point for Rehoboam, but the dummy doesn't see it. This is really good advice. Just be good to them. Give them a good reason to follow you, and they'll follow you. I mean, that's just like, duh. It's such good advice. But then Rehoboam, he finds some of his buddies, his school buddies, like the young dudes who never led anything, never did anything. You know what I mean? It's like they got a whole lot of ideas because, it's like I went to seminary. And in seminary, none of us have ever led a church, but we sit around in the lounge all day talking about how, boy, I tell you one thing, if I was leading a church, or it's kind of like before you have kids, how you know everything about raising kids because, before you have any. And you can tell everybody how to raise their kids, but you've never had any kids. You know how it is. The truth is, you don't know some things until you have had some things or done certain things. And these guys haven't had or done anything. But Rehoboam says, what do y'all think? And they think, man, I'm telling you one thing. You better go in there right now and let them know who's boss. I think you need to go in there and say, you think my daddy was a bad mamma jamma? You just wait till you see me. And that whole thing. My father laid heavy burdens on you. My little finger is thicker than his waist. You know that finger and waist, those are euphemisms, right? What he's saying there is something really crude that I cannot repeat on 10 with Tim. But can you make that leap and understand what they actually say? Because your Bible translators felt like you couldn't handle that. So they say, finger and waist, but that's not what he was saying. He's saying, I am twice the man my daddy was, which is crude. And a silly thing to say. But anyway, that's what we'd say, man, they're out there, sitting there drinking beer, on the back of pickup trucks. So, you go in there and tell them this. And that dummy, he follows them. He listens to the young guys. Now, there's probably a great sermon here about the wisdom that comes with the elders and the stupidity that comes with being young. So young people should always listen to old people, and I think generally that is a principle that bears. I think that there is a wisdom that comes with age when old people have learned something from their lives. That is not universally true. Can I just say that? It's not universally true. There are old people who are not wise. They are not wise. They've never learned anything from their life. Now, they could have. They've seen some things. They've been through some things. But in order to gain wisdom, you got to learn something from your life. And some people don't learn anything. So let's just say that. And then there are some young people, who have wisdom that comes with humility. In other words, when you're young, part of wisdom is not so much to disown what you know, but to be very, very aware of what you don't know, and that's the problem when people who don't know try to talk like they know. And that's what happens here. Rehoboam listens to the people who don't know, but talk like they know, and they don't know anything. And so Rehoboam makes a mistake of thinking that being the king has to do with power and authority and my little finger sticker, yeah. And so it turns out to be a tragic mistake. 3 days later, all the people come to hear Rehoboam's decision, just as he had said, and he comes back and he speaks harshly to them, and he, thumbs it right up their nose. Rejects the advice of the older leaders, listens to the young dudes, and he says, man, my father beat you with whips. I will beat you with scorpions. So he didn't listen to the people. He didn't listen to the voice of wisdom. And so as verse 16, 15, 16 point out in this chapter, so the prophecy of Ahijah is fulfilled. And at this point, the northern kingdom say, done, we're not following David's dynasty. If this is what David's dynasty looks like, if this is what the grandsons of David, if this is what kind of king we're getting, then we're not. We're out. We're out. We're not a part of this kingdom. Down with the dynasty of David. We have no interest in the sons of Jesse. Back to your homes, O Israel. Look out for your own house, O David. And at this point, y'all, literally, that's how a kingdom divides. King Rehoboam sent Adoniram to restore order. Okay, that's the dumbest choice possible. Again, back in 1 Kings chapter 5, when I told you that we're told that there are 30,000, from Israel in forced labor, they were put under, Adoniram. So this is the worst he's going to come restore peace. They hate him. He is a symbol of everything that makes them, want to rebel. So anyway, with this, the people stone Adoniram to death. The news reaches King Rehoboam. He jumps into his chariot, flees to Jerusalem, and to this day, the northern tribes of Israel have refused to be ruled by a descendant of David. And there you go. In one chapter, one fell swoop, you go from this glorious kingdom of Solomon with peacocks and apes and gold to a divided kingdom, more or less because they would not follow what God said. God said, I will establish your dynasty. I will build you a house. I will build you a house, David. Not what he promised him. But you got to follow me. Solomon, I will bless you if you will follow me. I will bless you and your sons, but you got to follow me. And that's the one thing Solomon could not do. It's the one thing that Rehoboam cannot do. Throughout from what follows in Chronicles, we're going to go through a lot of kings, and you notice that one of the ways that you read their character is how they respond to wise counsel. And so Rehoboam is the first poster child for the lack of humility, the inability to be corrected, the lack of humility to listen, and therefore a very, very poor choice leads to the destruction of the kingdom. Wow. Anyway, we'll pick up right here on Monday morning. The story continues. Two chapters for Monday, chapter 11 and chapter 12. All right, 2 Chronicles chapter 11, all the way. These are short through chapter 12. I think there's 16 verses in chapter 12. All right, so 11 and 12 for Monday. Have a great weekend. I will say, hey, kids worship, kids-led worship Sunday morning here at Woodburn in the 11 o'clock service. 8 and 9:30 are regular worship. 11 o'clock is kids-led. It's going to be awesome, and I will see you there. If not, I will see you Monday morning, 10 o'clock for 10 with Tim. I love you guys so much. Have a great Friday.